design or art. But value really is more important in so many ways, because if you don't have value down, when you bring a color in, things will feel kind of flat, because you haven't learned to use your lights and your darks properly. There is an Italian or Latin term, it's called chiaroscuro, and it is basically the light going from light values to dark values. Chiaroscuro is usually very gradual change from light to dark. Tenebrism is more shocking, going from light to dark. So sometimes, like let's say you have a really dark room and you have one spotlight going on a character, or let's say it's a double movie. So you've got that spotlight going on it. You might only see light areas and very little grays, middle grays. It'll almost be light areas or else dark areas, and that's what we call tenebrism. So usually people, if they have a good photograph of something that has diffused light, you're going to probably be using chiaroscuro, which is going from our white paper in this case, going to your vine or willow charcoal if it's lighter, and then you're going to go to the 2B. 4B is next. 6B is your darkest of your pencils. And now what is your darkest tool? Compressed charcoal. Yes. Okay, so compressed charcoal. So at the very end is when we come in with compressed charcoal. This sketch Candy passing out, I actually have very little compressed charcoal in there quite at this point. I usually hold off on my compressed charcoal until I pretty much have the drawing finished myself, and then I come in and I put those really dark values in. And I'm very careful where I put them. I don't want to have them all lumped on one side, because they tend to create imbalance. Yes, it was actually moving this right here.
Oh, cool. I like that. I did this once, but it didn't come out right.
You can do that. So the gray is actually powdered chocolate, and I have that in jars, and we'll actually do that. Okay, so we'll teach you that. Maybe today I'll take the bottles of it when we get to that. And so when you do the you're toning the paper, and so with tone your paper, you have to erase from the highlight, and then you add the darkest to the dark. So that is called toning.
That's gonna take me a while.
I like to tone my paper if I'm doing like for instance, I have a student today who's gonna in drawing 2 they have to do a portrait. I don't want them to do a self-portrait because I know that Mr. Almeida in drawing 1 has them do the self-portrait. So I usually just tell them a portrait of someone. It doesn't have to be a straight picture. I don't like portraits that look like I call a school picture or a driver's license picture. I don't like that kind of drawing. I always tell people, I says, the best photographs are usually of your kid, like when you're taking pictures of your kids. It's usually of them playing around and they don't know that you're taking a picture. Because as soon as you go to get that camera out to take a picture, they do their crazy little grin, that is not very pretty or whatever, or very handsome or whatever. So that's why I always say, if you're doing a portrait of someone, do something that they love. Well, anyway, the one student who had this one photograph of a man smoking a cigarette, she goes, do you have anything against that? And I said, no. I said, I don't smoke, but I don't have anything against somebody. I said, it's a great photograph. It's a guy kind of turned, has his 2 hands, and of course the cigarette there, and there's a little bit of smoke coming from the cigarette. I go, it's a great pose. It's not a straight thing. So, but in that photograph, it has this real soft gray on the man's face. So it's like it's either white or it's a soft gray, and And so she said, well, what medium would you do it in? I would use the powdered charcoal, erase for the highlights, and add my darks. The powdered charcoal, and there is graphite that comes like that too. So, and I have that as well. So if you're using graphite pigment, you can use the powdered graphite rather than the powdered charcoal. The disadvantage to toning the paper is that you can never give as precise a detail as if you do it without toning. Okay? That toning is very nice because I like it because it softens it. Like for instance, on a portrait, softens the features of a person's face. If you have wrinkles on somebody, that's pretty rugged looking, the toning works great because you don't get that look like you're drawing lines in their face. You're just adding a little bit of dark and wrinkles and maybe a little highlighting with an eraser. Just going to bring in a few erasure marks that are strategically placed. So it makes the person look more like real wrinkles instead of lines. I don't know if you've ever seen a drawing of somebody and it just looks like they have wrinkles and the person just drew these lines for the wrinkles. And it doesn't really look like the real thing. The real thing is folded skin. And you made it look like harsh lines, like cut marks almost on the face. And that's not what we want to do. Realistic line, that is. So anyway, that is the advantage to that. Also, it's a big time saver because you have all your mental values there. So you're just erasing and adding the darks. So it does save you a lot of time. One of the things too is that it tends to make it so you're not looking at a white piece of paper. I don't think any of you guys are intimidated by the white piece of paper or the big piece of paper anymore. But remember at the beginning of the semester, some of you were like, you have to draw this big, because you were drawing in a sketchbook most likely before that. So it's a challenge to draw big. And it's just kind of the same thing for some people when they look at a white paper, they're like, I don't really know where to start. People who are doing an oil painting, looking at that blank canvas can be kind of intimidating. So even in oil painting, I tell people to tone their canvas. So they might just put a color like yellow ochre over the whole canvas, and then I tell them to dip there. Of course, now here we can't use good old paint thinner and things like that, so we have water-based oils, which are horrible. But the advantage is it is water-based, so you can clean up with soap and water. But I just have them dip a towel, a little cloth, in water, and I'll have them go ahead and take away what they're going to draw. So if they're going to draw a person, they'll start to take away that person onto that tone. So that's not scary for them. For some reason, that's not as scary as if I just give them a brush and I go start painting this person, that's scary for them. But so toning your paper or your canvas can kind of get somebody over that hump. Now, if any of you have painted a lot, there's going to be times, or not, there's going to be times when you have what we call it writer's block if it's writing, but even in painting and drawing, sometimes you just don't know what to paint or draw. And so that, I always tell people, if you're at that place, I says, go through your photographs. Find a really pretty scene from a vacation you took and just start to paint that. And it'll get your creative juices going again. And you're still painting, you're still learning. Yeah, maybe there's a job that comes up to paint a mural and the people want a specific thing. So then you draw or paint what they want instead of what you want. Again, you're going to learn from that. Even if it's not something you would do on your own, you're going to learn from it. So it's worth doing it. And you're still doing art, and you'd be surprised. You come off doing this happens to me every single time. You come off doing a commission, especially if it's a big long one that's due many days, maybe months, a month or two to finish. You come back to your studio or wherever you paint, and all of a sudden you can just get in there and paint, and come up with some nice work. So that is something to think about too, is that There's other ways to get around that writer's block, or in our case, painter's block, or just block, because it does happen to everybody. And like for instance, for me, I'm not feeling very good, obviously. And there's days like if I start to just write something, like yesterday was like that. I couldn't even write a stupid check. So it looked awful. The handwriting was horrible, didn't look like mine. I said the bank's probably gonna reject it because it doesn't look like my signature. And then so sometimes I'm like, well, should I even try painting? Is today gonna be one of the bad days or a good day? Today's a good day because I helped several people in an advance class, and I was in painting and doing a little demo for them, on their table and doing fine. So it's just weird. But do you make yourself get out there and try the days, not knowing if it's going to be a good day or a bad day? I find myself saying, that's a heck. I'll do this. I'll cook dinner. I'll do this instead of drawing paint. Something like that happens, or you just get busy with life, And then hopefully drawing class will help you always be able to pick up your pencil at least and draw, and then maybe there'll be something that comes out of that creatively. So anyway, today this is one of the examples I showed you, and I'm just gonna kind of walk you through it, and then I'll go ahead and do it. Here, you don't have to do a fancy grayscale. Now this paper was a little bit different, and it's not as nice as the one you have it at. So it didn't win quite as well. And I'm not too worried about it being blended perfectly here at all. Here, when you do your sphere, your cylinder, go ahead and take a little bit of time. Use the blending stub to get used to using it. How many of you have used the blending stub before? Okay, several, yay! So one of the things to remember with charcoal is always start on the light value when you're using the blending stub and move to the dark. Otherwise, it picks up the dark so quickly, and you'll get too dark too quick. Is what I think.
Is the blending stub just an eraser, or does it lay down some material?
It's just made out of paper. It has no color in it.
So it just bounces up.
Yeah, it just basically gives you something smooth. If you're trying to get it super smooth, you can do a circular motions with it. I always use the side of it, rather than the point. You want to save your point for detail, or like around the edge here. So save your point for that. Use the side more, not the whole big side, just the edge of it. I didn't even get my stub out. But yeah, but here we're going to go from our white paper to the vine, or in your case, willow, 2B, 4B, 6B, and the very last of your grayscale is going to be compressed charcoal. When you do a spheres change a lot as lighting changes on them. If you see those big circular objects that are close to the building and look at them different times of the day, if the sun is above us, this is going to be your light part, and it's going to have that half moon at the bottom of it. If you come here early in the morning, sun's just over here, you're going to see the light more like this, okay? You wait till sunset, also more like that, it's going to be the light source coming from the other side. What I like to have people think about are these concentric rings. You're going to get on places completely white, and then they're going to be a little darker, and so on. Now, you see right here, I have this little white area. This is reflected light. And once we are working on the actual object, you might see reflected light. Like let's say we have one of those Washington Red Delicious. It's kind of a dark red color, and it's shiny because the wax on it from the store. So the light, so I'll be using those lamps over there to give us some light. So it's going to get on your object over here, then it's going to bounce from that table back to your object, and you're going to get a little bit of reflected light. Sometimes it's more visible than others. If you're outside, like I do shiny horses a lot, because I do a lot of horse parks, I haven't done anything lately. But most of the time, if somebody hires me to do a horse portrait, that horse is an expensive horse. It's very well taken care of, and it's very shiny, you know. So I go out there to take photographs of it, and its whole coat is super reflective. But if you look at the bottom of its belly, you'll see reflected light, where the sun is hitting that ground and coming up and bouncing up on the horse's belly. It may not be completely across the whole thing, but it might be just on a third of it, or maybe a half of it, but you're gonna see it there. Quite often on boats out in the, like docked on the dock, you'll see reflected light too from the opposite side, because the boat shape of it, it just allows light to wrap around. Sometimes putting it in there can actually make something look not 3D, like for instance in boats, that's happened to me before. Because you really want them to look like they go like that at the, what would that be called, the bow? Yeah. So at the bow, you want that to look like it's going like that. And so sometimes if you put that reflective light, all of a sudden your bow kind of comes this way. And so there's times when you have to compensate and do something a little different than you actually see. And then a cylindrical object. This one happens to be more like where the top is solid, like that cylindrical object that we have is painted white wood. Kind of what you see. One of the things about shadows, I don't have tabletop in here, but it's not. We're just doing a little work up here, not really a still life like we will be eventually. On Monday we do cloth. So you'll do cloth that's got folds in it with lights on it, and it's a good way to get that natural look of things going in and out. Then I'll probably have to do a small still life, and then I have material that is striped black and white. So you'll actually do one of those, and then I cover a chair. I do 2 chairs, I put one over there. And over here the striped fabric, and so you learn how to do all those stripes going around an object. So that's why we work on value. I kind of skip a chapter or 2 here in your book because he has you do the flags before teaching you. He calls them flags, the striped cloth, before teaching you value. And I'm like, well, gee, look, there's how do you know about value? You're using value there, but you skip the value part. So that's why I kind of jiggle things around a little bit. So this would be what you would see more in a cylindrical object. And I forgot to show you about shadows. Shadows, you want them to look like they're going on something flat, mostly. Now, if you're doing a mountain scene and you're doing shadows from trees, let's say a bunch of pine trees, the shadows might be, they're probably going up the hill, or they could be going down the hill. So therefore, in those types of instances, you might see shadows that are quite different than these. They might be darker towards the back than they are towards the front, and things like that. And they might be distorted somewhat too. We would think of them distorted if they weren't on a hill. Here, we're trying to make that shadow look like it's on a flat table. So out of these 2 right here, which one looks better to you that looks like it's on a flat table? There's no right one. Bottom line. What did you think?
Well, I see a little bit of distortion on the bottom, yeah.
Okay. So what did you guys think? That one is the better one out of the 2. Partly because it's a little bit more elongated, but it's also the shading on it is a little bit lighter towards the back here. But it's really mostly the shape of it, isn't it? Now there's going to be times when that light's on that, and that shadow could be like right here. Like for instance, you go out there and those spheres that are out front, if the sun's high, you're going to have a very short shadow and closer to the object, okay, than that. This again is more like what you would see early morning or afternoon. So same thing here. But this one kind of gives me the feeling that it's coming forward. And I think part of it is the shadow starts a little bit too low right here. So make sure you that in super lightly. What do you notice about the value of the shadow?
It's darker the closer to the object.
Right. And where else?
The bottom.
The bottom. So what is closest to the viewer and closest to the object, that's your darkest part of your shadow. If you're using color, that you can make it look better by putting a little bit cool colors back here. So let's say that you're on dirt. You're going to use more of a warm brown in this part of the shadow. And then as you go back, you're going to add some blues to it, cool it off, set it back. Okay, so color comes into play also to create a better shadow. So you're basically going to be doing that. And this is all we're going to do tonight. So if we get done a little early, that's great because I don't want to go further with the book. But I didn't plan it like that. It just happened. I was like, they can do the shortened circles at home, and we can do this. That we stay on our schedule. Okay, so I do have a bunch of tape, so you can come and get a tape when you get to the sphere. And I use the outside of the tape for my, well, maybe not this one, because this one's been used a lot. You can just use the inside of the tape if you want for your sphere, okay? But that way you're using this and it's faster than, anything, and you still get a round circle, okay? And you can do that. So,
Probably retrace it.
yeah, and just trace it. That way you don't have to worry about it. So here, you can see how I have these little lines. You do not have to do that. I just think for some people it kind of helps them. I have my reflected light right there, so you can put them in. Again, you might be outside and you're looking at that sphere out at the 2700 building, and depending on where the light is, it's going to look totally different than this. It's not that this was wrong, it's not that that was wrong. Well, that one has to be right because you see it, right there. And we're going to see it here too. What I wanted to say too is that your sphere could change. This could be white, and the way our lighting is on it, it may not have any darker value on it than a 2 or a 4 pencil at the most. So the rest of it's going to be white. One of the times, this is before eggs cost as much as they used to. I used to put a black velvet cloth and put eggs, and just have eggs that are closer to you and eggs that are further away. And sometimes people's eggs didn't look like eggs or more like rocks, but they still learned how to shade, and then they also learned how to get size and position those eggs on the cloth so they look like they were getting further away. So some of the eggs overlapped each other, and yet some of the eggs were more in the highlighted areas, so they looked whiter than other eggs, even though they were all white eggs. But it just depends where that light is hitting. And then also the light of the object, the lightness of the object, or the darkness. You take a nice black, shiny, like 8 ball without the 8 on it, just a black wooden ball that's super shiny. That is a great thing to draw with this, technique too, because you get that reflective light. So some things reflect the light like a black shiny ball. I think I lost it. I had like a silver ball that I used to have you guys draw because it was super shiny, had a lot of reflection on it. I have to look and see if I can find it now. Or else it got lost in our transfer over here. But that reflects light. And then some things absorb light. So an orange, for instance, because it has the peel that's got some texture on it, and also the way the orange peel is made, it kind of absorbs light. Lemons do the same thing, not quite as much, because if you look at a lemon, their pores are not as deep as they are in the orange. So anything like that changes a lot. So you look around at people's hair. Draw everybody's hair here. Some people show more highlights. Some people we have been put in by the beautician. hair, like I was looking at your hair, super shiny, it's dark, you see a lot of highlights on her hair. And it's just because of the texture of her hair, and then plus it's super dark, so you just happen to see a lot of reflective light. So, someone else might have curly hair that you see the highlights on. Do that with like living sound because okay, one of the things I especially when I'm administrating, I use my fingers a lot faster. When you're doing a really nice drawing, you should never, ever do this. What? This is why we have this. Yes, exactly. Because you know why? How old we have oils on our hands, and those oils break down our paper, and they also break down the medium eventually. So it's a good habit to always use your tool. And then when we're doing real serious artwork, I give you a piece. Well, I always have copy paper up here. You put a piece of copy paper under your hand, so that way even your hand never that you they're fairly clean most of the time. You always have it covered, okay? So you don't get those oils on your thing. So get in the habit of working clean and neat. That way, if you ever get a job as an illustrator, you have thrown this down, okay? Because a lot of people are great artists, but when they switch over to being an illustrator, that's hard for them because they haven't learned how to be neat. And 2D foundation, when I taught it, you had to be super neat. I don't know about now. I used to, if you had a smudge on the back of your paper or project, I would mark you down a whole grade point.
Oh, hell.
Because I was taught like that. And because cleanliness was next to godliness. And I still work like that at home. Not so much if I'm doing oils because they're a little bit more messy. I mean, I can get dirty and that just along with everybody else. But if I'm doing something that has to be clean and neat, I sure can do it now. And so get in the habit of doing that, even though your teacher's up there using her fingers, but I'm doing it for reasons that are a lot faster. So I'm going to go ahead. This is still my line. Because what I'm shooting for is like this gradual change from light and dark, and you don't have to worry about if you go outside of that box you made. You're not going to get graded on that at all because we're not in the 2D foundation class. We're in 2D foundation. You want to do a nice straight stroke portfolio. So you can see that I have a very nice transition going from my right over here to my left. And just I have got it on there. I was going from
do this with exacto blade, because once they're shady, I really like to use the exacto blade to sharpen my pencils. Because this way, I mean, you can sharpen them periodically and keep from ever scratching your paper with wood, but that's the main reason why we do it with the exacto blade. We get a lot more charcoal that's exposed. Again, I'm going to go as dark as my shoes will go. And then get to the right, fix that where I'm going to do before. I might end up making mine a little longer than what it is, which is fine. Again, I'm going to go ahead and blend. Now, some of you who have worked with charcoal and shaded with charcoal, and you know you have a stroke down that looks very new, or Van Gogh or something, definite stroke pattern, texture pattern. You can work that way. You don't have to blend it out. In fact, one of the drawing teachers we had years ago, he used to always tell me that using a stump was a crutch too. You can shade without it, and you can't. If you have good paper, you can use any sharp circles. You don't want to have to touch anything with stuff. There's some drawings I never use the blending stuff on that, but they save a lot of time. Let me tell you. But you can do a whole drawing without blending stuff. I don't have a pattern for my strokes. Probably because I've always been more of a realistic artist. For the most part, we don't see a lot of strokes on things, maybe on hair or whatever, but not on faces and things like that. So I don't have a I'm going to go ahead and go to the 4B. Again, keep it a little darker as the back part of that. Now this pencil is quite a bit softer than my it's very inexpensive if I buy it for the 500 sheets. I get it cheaper. 60. I'm gonna go outside of this one like. Go out a bit right there, and I'll bring that pencil out. And some people, someone like for instance, you have a Fabriano pastel paper in your kit that has this beautiful texture to it. And when I work on that paper, I never use the stubs because I like that texture to come through. It almost makes it look like you've drawn on a canvas. The textures that are on it. So, but yet I have students who sometimes use the blending stuff on it, and it looks beautiful that way too. But I like it without the blending stuff. I just like that look of that paper. And when you use the blending stuff, it's kind of like you could have used any piece of drawing paper, instead of that one. Because the Fabriano one is a little bit difficult to work with. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my compressed charcoal out here. Compressed, because we don't use a lot of compressed. Then you can come back in, apply full overlay again, shooting for going from the lightest light to the darkest dark. And then if you want to label it, so that way it's, you know, ingrained in your brain, 2, and 4, and 6, and then 4. Pretty soon, this is just all like second nature. And you don't have to really get that. Yeah. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then we'll start the here. And I'm gonna take over.
So we're gonna use stick first, and then we're gonna go right with stick.
And the white paper.
Amazing.
Now, if you get white paper. Now, if you get white paper. Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna make sure.
This is the value. The stick.
From now on, bring all of these things, okay? And you don't have to worry about paper. I have white paper, okay? Until I want you to do something and I might say,
This is first,
bring your Fabriano.
and then the B2 more circles.
What? Is there a specific size? Just one of your middle size ones, fine for today. You don't need the longest one, and you don't need. I always save the little ones for when we're doing detail.
The sticks going. No, it's perfect. So yeah.
It must be done this before, but if you want to get it
We're gonna use this. This charcoal pencil. So you're gonna play A2, B4, B6. Next thing stick is this.
Or are you,
Little
okay,
sticks.
so you don't have to do it. I mean, you don't, and so I like to get,
And then the big ones right here.
I like to get about that much charcoal sticking out, believe it or not.
And
I
we're
have
gonna
one,
shade
I
with
have
this.
one thing, just because I want to have a working point with it, and yet I want to keep it so that it's, not gonna fall apart. You get it too long, it falls apart, especially the sticks.
This is the eraser you need.
If you're starting to hit wood, just use the pencil cutter. And you just keep going away like that. And I would probably try to get a little bit more than what I have right now. And that way you have quite a bit of time before you need to shape it. Okay. But I always have exactly where it's, there's a customer kit right there, there's a bunch of them,
Second layer.
in my pocket right now.
I know.
I carried it back since I was in Cup Scout.
Yeah, Red's always has one, and he collects them actually. And he always has one, but then like the other day we were going to the fair and they had that metal
Yeah.
detector. So you have to take it out of the pocket and leave it in the car. And so good thing is that they'll just pick it from you, you know, and so you lose your pocket knife.
I ran into trouble in the airport a few times for that.
Yeah.
I remember, and now I have it all, you have it was a check baggage you put it in.
Today we're earning cylinders into shaking.
Mike's mom,
If you don't have this, use a napkin or something
he's at the Union Airport.
for your hand. You can use the napkin.
From San Francisco to Yuma, no problem. I can't remember, I think it was the Phoenix Airport, and then.
And if you don't got a sharpener,
So
use
when
a one of these, a regular pencil, shade it. Like you were sharpening, shade off or shading. Get a Q-tip and use it as your pencil.
And they're like, well, so we waited a minute, so he said, just do it, right? This is
No,
what nice of him to do that. But they don't have to do that. Anybody else want to learn how to do it anyway? That's exactly what you do. Because I wish I did.
You mean you take the shading thing, how the pencil?
Right,
This,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, that
I
was
know how to do it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the main advantage to it is just that you don't scratch your paper with your lip.
Because they'll leave lines and stuff like that.
But here we have such a good pencil sharpener. You can just go sharpen your pencil again. And if it gets that low to where you're going to start, just go sharpen it again. Before you actually, okay, sure. So you're just going to use this. So you're going to go away from, but yours is really supposed to be sharp. So you're trying to just get the wood. This one. You can say I'm getting just purple. I think we're trying not to get the purple. I like it, and you can also, if you're doing a certain texture, you can shape the edge of it to look a certain way. So some people like this to be blunt. Some people don't care like this. You can just use it for shading. So see how I have a little bit more purple now. Like this. Yeah, it doesn't make as good a point, but you can keep turning it as you go, and that will make a point. And I always have exactly the amount of like Tupperware containers there. Give it a try.
We're trying out short. You're doing the dark too.
So basically, every time I see your case, because I have a case just like that.
We don't have this. Use the paper.
In there, usually, it each one came in it, but I use it, in the car, it's got my sunglasses. So you're just gonna go away from your car. Oh, okay. Right ahead, that's why.
See, it's smoother with the paper than with the pencil. See? The difference.
I like to get nice and long.
But not super long to go on the way.
Okay.
I'm going
So
circle.
longer than this. So you get circles that- So that is about right. I usually stick to I'll start like that. Because that's the whole purpose. You don't want to get that wood scratching. Especially when we've got dishes. So now I just got a lot more to lay down.
Happy Halloween. That's wild. What you been up to?
It does take a while. Yeah, just grab yourself a new paper. Do you want to do the other one? Yeah, as long as you're going away from your hand, you're good. Just don't go towards your hand. Okay. Sure. Well, and there, it's in a little black thing in there, and yeah, you'll see it in there. And then I think there's seven.
We're learning how to shade. Like, we're doing shading today. What are we doing? We're shading. We're learning how to shade. I'll show you what I'm doing. We're doing the shade. We're in class doing shades. We're doing the first reading, which is this from light to dark. Then we're gonna do what the teacher has in her hand right now, which is the cylinder and the sphere. Yeah. So before class, I was doing this. For class. That's why. The same thing. Maybe.
And then I went to a smaller place, it's like, this one was bigger. And I was like, okay, I like had a bunch of them that were smaller, and I was like, okay, let's use this one.
Okay, we're done with that. And back to the sphere. I'm gonna do a sphere. This let me show you. Let me fix it. Okay, so this was 6.
Oh, okay, what will we do on Monday? Sorry, you were sick. We just worked on, while I was gone, because I was thinking, I just happened to do the assignment, which was more, doing more foreshortened circles.
Oh, okay,
So-
wait, so we do that in the notebook or?
You can just do it in your sketchbook, that's fine, okay, just do like 2 or 3 settings with different cylindrical objects. Make sure that you have maybe a couple of them laying down, that would get that challenge of. Great. Yeah, you can just do it on Monday. I figured that way we stay on schedule. Rather than doing that today and then getting the day behind. Because I mean, Wednesday.
They're too high. Oh yeah. I keep doing it too high. Come on.
When you get to that,